間にかハードルの高い飲食店バイトデビューまで果たしていたとは。私、成長してる。あ、いつの間。
Is this personal growth?
どうぞ。
And that's the difference between being alone is different than being lonely. I talked about this in episode 1. I like being alone because I like myself. But you can be in a room full of people yet still feel lonely. Hello friends, my name is Benoit Kim, a UPenn educated psychotherapist and a master of overanalysis. Welcome to my detailed analysis of Bocchi the Rock episode 2. After recording episode 1 last week, I already know that I will be finishing the series. However, please pray that we don't get struck down by the copyright police because uploading episode 1 has already been a struggle due to the relentless copyright AI. Assassination Zero, Vinny, Greg Bocchi, and Foxlow Gaming are the sponsor tier highlights of today's video. I appreciate your support. Shout out to the best patron family and YouTube members. Sit back and I hope you enjoy. We're starting with the Shiba. Great start. Whoa, ice water. Why is she doing this? What is going on? Hitori, are you okay? I know that recently with biohacking and obviously ice bath does have tremendous psychological and physiological benefits, but why is she doing this? It's a rhetorical question. My guess and my prediction is that that's part of her seeking discomfort that I talked a lot about in episode 1. I think she's incrementally, remember what I said, not a massive leap going from 0 to 100. Like she going from a shut-in guitar hero practicing person to performing in the underground club for the first time, but incrementally, little bit by little bit. And I think this is part of her exposure therapy, doing things that she's afraid of to seek discomfort, because when it's appropriate and safe, that I talked a lot about in episode 1, we have to be eventually getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And the more appropriate discomfort we put ourselves through, our capacity for distress management, definition right here, or stress tolerance goes up. So we don't freak out and we don't have as much like adverse or negative reaction to the things we're afraid of. And I think that's what Hitori, aka Bocchi, is doing. Several days earlier.
昨日にじかちゃんから家族以外からのロインに遅れてやってきたのはいいものの前はにじかちゃんと一緒だったから入れた。
Listen to what Hitori just said. The joy of receiving a line message outside of her parents and commercials and ads. Remember in episode 1 when she was laying on the couch and she talks about she's so lonely. The only messages and vibrations on her phone that she gets is her parents, relatives, and commercials. That's it. But this time, finally someone outside of her families that is potentially becoming her friends is messaging her. And that's what I mean. When we do things that requires courage, remember, courage is not absence of fear, but quite the opposite. It is in front of fear, in light of fear. With the feeling of being scared, we do it anyway. That is called courageous. That is what bravery is. So when we do things that's courageously, good things happen. And those good things will fuel our motivation and we become more motivated. And that's how we create a virtuous or positive cycle versus the vicious cycle of being scared, feeling more withdrawn, retreats, feeling more lonely, feeling guilty, which is a lot of the cycles that many individuals and people that struggle with social anxiety.
誰かと一緒に入りたい。
You got this, Hitori.
5分。いや、10分。15分。 15分経ったら絶対何してるんだ
She was afraid of being seen as, I don't know, whatever she was afraid of. And then the people who she was afraid of being seen like that are literally watching her from on top of the staircase. By the way, but this is a very accurate psychological depiction of people who struggle with social anxiety. Remember what I talked about. Whatever phobia, or in this case, social anxiety that people are afraid of, they're not weak. Quite the opposite. They're extremely strong and courageous. We call that strength-based approach, right? Definition right here. Approaching every individual through the framework of let's highlight their strength. Let's talk about what they're good at versus spotlighting what they're not good at yet. And I want to highlight the power, the superpower of yet. I haven't become promoted yet. I don't have a band yet. I haven't performed in front of a culture festival yet. Because yet implies that it is going to happen, just not now, not yet. Doesn't it seem so much more hopeful? Try it out. Pause the video and make a statement about something you've been wishing or trying or desiring to do, but you're afraid for whatever circumstances. Say that statement and attach the word yet at the end. And notice the difference, your emotional response and how you feel. I guarantee you that you will feel better. You'll have that strength. That's the power of a yet. Anyway, so it's a very accurate representation of Hitori, postponing 5 minutes, 10 minutes because of the significance and the severity of her internal battle. But there's so much courage there. She's saying that she is absolutely petrified and terrified. At the same time, yes, she's postponing going into the club, a starry club, a little bit. But still, she didn't leave. She didn't go home. She's still doing her circles. She's trying to summon the courage. Amazing to see. And comical.
もうちょっと見てたいするのやめてあげてはいということで第1回結束バンドメンバーミーティング開催します拍手パチパチパチパチパチパチパチ思えば全然仲良くないから何がすればいいかわかんないや身も蓋もないそんな時のためにこんなものいいね
Bungee jumping? What? Nice. This is really clinically astute. So as a psychotherapist, I do group therapy with multiple clients. I teach things and topics such as healthy relationships, seeking safety, boundary setting, substance recovery, because I deal with comorbidities, or formerly known as dual diagnosis population, definition right here. People who struggle with severe mental illness and severe mental health conditions, and also severe addiction. A lot of times in my groups, I have such like a rolling dice with different topics, right? And it's like a great icebreaker. You don't really have to stress about what topics do I talk about, how do I open it up, what kind of introduction do we do. Just roll the dice and you give clients multiple options to what they want to talk about. It's creative, it's fun, but it's also less pressure for everyone involved, which is what they're doing here.
2人とも家が近いから選んだ家ここら辺じゃないのあ、いや、
Damn!
ここは誰も自分の過去を知らないはい、特番終了すみません高校でも基本一人なもので楽しい浮かれたお話一つも提供できなくて大丈夫りょうもねそんな友達いないしうん2時かだけくんりょうさんは私と
Aww. Loneliness Hill? Oh my gosh. A quick pause. Hitori is spotlighting that, oh my gosh, she's just like me. That is the power of validation and learning and knowing that we are not alone. Oftentimes, one of the biggest detriments of our mental health distress, stresses, anxiety, depressions, and whatever in between is this false, but nonetheless valid feeling that no one else can relate to what we are going through. No one else understands my invisible struggle and suffering. No one gets me. No one understands what I'm going through. That's what Hitori's been feeling as well, especially with social anxiety. But here she's learning that, oh, she's just like me. I'm not alone. I'm not lonely. Maybe we can become friends. And I also want to give some digital flowers, like the flowers in the back, to Hitori, aka Bocchi, that she's so honest. She's not afraid of covering up and fronting and faking her past. When she was asked, why are you going to a school 2 hours away? That is such a long commute. She said, I wanted to go somewhere far away where no one knew of my past. Think about how embarrassing it is for Hitori to share that. To two pretty much strangers, they've hung out one time with the performance at the club in episode 1. Think about the amount of courage to be that honest, that forthcoming, that emotionally open. Honesty is the best policy because we don't want to resort to strategies or hacks and tactics to gain quick friendships by lying about ourselves. Because even if those people accept you under the false and fake pretenses, it is fake. It's not real. They're accepting your false sense of self, false presentation, who you appear to be, versus actually accepting you for who you really are, our authentic selves. That is what Hitori's doing. Beautiful, beautiful to see. She struggles with social anxiety, but she's so honest. She's so real. Amazing. So is everyone else, by the way, not just Hitori. Every character so far are very, very real, very genuine, and very authentic. Authenticity is the way to go if you want to cultivate meaningful and deep relationships.
いや違う。りょうさんは一人でいるのが好きな人だ。ることのできない深く大きな溝が。
Dude, this show is so I did not expect such like a fantastical editing style to this animation. Amazing. And that's the difference between being alone is different than being lonely. I talked about this in episode 1. I like being alone because I like myself. But you can be in a room full of people yet still feel lonely. So it sounds like the friend enjoys being alone because she's comfortable with who she is. Versus Hitori is lonely and she is alone out of necessity because of her struggle with social anxiety. Obviously, it's a comical depiction, but pretty accurate and very, very psychologically deep.
早くトラップに引っかかるところだった。ぼっちちゃん、会話を楽しもうよ。次は好きな音楽の話。略して。なあ、私はテクノ歌謡とか。
Oh.
最近はサウジアラその青春コンプレックスを刺激する歌以外なら何でも。
What's Seishin complex? What does that mean? I laughed because this is a comical portrayal, but what's Seishin complex?
青春コンプレックス。
Oh, it's gonna answer.
説明しよう。
Okay.
青春コンプレックス。淡い恋といった一人の学校生活には無
Oh.
そういう歌詞聞くとうつうつとしてくる。
逆に青春時代の鬱憤を歌詞にた
けど好きなバンドが学生時代からに
おーいお願い一人の世界に入らないで
I apologize. I forgot the name of that blonde friend. She's amazing, by the way. Her extroversion, her warmness, her outgoing nature, she's like a social butterfly, is really uplifting everyone involved. And is almost like a bridge, like a lifeline. It's almost as if Hitori's drowning in the water, like, oh my gosh. Because many people who struggle with social anxiety, whenever they feel some type of way, whatever the social situation is, they retract into their mind. And there is a famous quote that I love. The quote is, right here, we often suffer more in our imagination than in reality. I'll say it again. we often suffer more in our imagination than in our reality. It's a quote by Napoleon Hill. And that's what Hitori is doing. She retracted from the reality. She's disconnected and she's in her mind. And the blonde friend, she's like, hey, come back to our planet, please. And I really want to share this important psychological lesson that our feelings are 100% valid and real because they're our truth. They are our feelings, full stop. At the same time, our feelings are not always the same as facts. Facts are facts, reality is reality, and our feelings are often our perceptions of our reality and our circumstances and how we're reacting to what is happening based on our conditions, our struggle, and anything in between. So that's what the blonde friend is saying, that, hey, come back to us. And sounds like that complex is whatever songs that's really uplifting and very social, like making about love, I almost said making love, about the summer, about the beach, that reminds Hitori of her shame and guilt and her social isolation. Makes sense?
初ライブはインストだったけど、次はボーカル入れたいんだ。本当は逃げたギターの子が歌うはずだったんだけど、あの子どこ行ったんだろう。
Can Hitori sing? Can Hitori sing? No way.
いや違う。真のコミュ障は逃げることもできない。
I know I'm pausing a lot. It's also in part because of how relentless the copyright is. Seriously, like Bocchi the Rock is, I don't know why, it's very scrutinized. And the copyright was insane just from episode 1, like it talks about introduction. But in part, Hitori just says something very psychologically sound and accurate. She said that can be it. If you are truly like a social shut-in and social anxiety like me, you can't not even run away. That's the 4 primary human responses of fear responses. 4 primary fear responses. The list is right here. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Most people, or not most, because most is 51% statistically, but many people, again, there's no good or bad. It's just our genetics, our upbringing, our conditioning. Different people have different ways of responding with their fear responses, period. But sounds like for Hitori, when she is scared, her primary fear response is freeze. She's frozen, paralyzed. She can't even run away. So it is very psychologically accurate.
だよね。その湧き出る自信は何？羨ましい。これ見つけたら曲も作ろうよ。りょう作曲できるし、歌詞に。明暗じゃない？
小中9年間、休み時間を図書室で過ごしす。
お。
Nijika, that's her name.
次はノルマの話。
What?
堂々と流された。
昨日のライブは私の友達が結構来てくれたからチケットはけたんだけど、
あの出来じゃ2回目は来ない。
だよね。りょうは友達いないから集客当てにできないし、ぼっちちゃんはごめん、大丈夫だから死んだ魚の目やめて。
イマジナリーフレンドならたくさんいるのにな。
ひとりちゃん最高。
I want to quickly talk about the power and the function of imaginary friends. Many children who struggle with loneliness and social isolation, either because of social anxiety or whatever different circumstances, because everyone's situations are complex, period. They were able to use their creativity to summon and create imaginary friends. It's actually part of a coping or defensive mechanism, definition right here. It's a coping mechanism and surviving mechanism because, like I said, every clinical research has established the detriments of social isolation and loneliness on our future health, period. Loneliness is one of the biggest leading killers of today's population. Seriously, loneliness is a very, very big epidemic that people aren't talking enough about. And that's what children do. In light of those social isolation, they want to survive. So they create these imaginary friends. It's actually a very, very helpful and powerful things that many children do. And that's what Hitori does. That's why she's able to still not thrive, but survive through the middle school. And now she's in high school. These imaginary friends creates hope, creates additional reasons for these individuals who are struggling with loneliness to keep living on. Because as long as we are alive, there is hope. Full stop. So please do not give up and do whatever you gotta do. Imaginary friends, journaling, uploading videos to YouTube, making friends on internet or online community like what Hitori's been doing. There's no judgment. We do whatever we gotta do out of necessity to survive.
当分ライブのたびに数万円必要だからノルマ代機材代もろもろ稼ぐためにバイトしよう。はい。バイト？今日一声出たね。絶対嫌だ。働きた。豚さん。
It's her savings?
お母さんが私の結婚費を貯めてくれてて。使わせていただかないいただかないでも働きたくない
Goes viral? Oh my gosh. Death penalty. Again, first of all, I just want to really spotlight, and this anime has so many different animation style. It's so creative. It's so diverse. I no wonder why this show won the poll in my Patreon and Discord channels, because it is a really, really great show. But one thing I just want to drive home is, again, Hitori once again was disconnected from the reality into her fantasy lands. It's the same thing she did earlier when the blonde friends asked her to come back to the planet. And what she's doing psychologically, we call it rumination or racing thoughts. Definition right here. Ruminations. We ruminate or we think a lot about thoughts that stress us out. And the more we try not to think about that anxious thought, that thought of overwhelm gets magnified and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So the more we try to stop thinking about it, the louder and the bigger it gets. So we get stuck. It's like a spiral thinking. It's like a spiral. I don't want to think about it, but the thought gets louder. And to a point that she literally thought about like a death sentence for creeping customers out after going viral on YouTube because of her stubbornness and her inability to have back and forth with customers, right? So that's rumination. It's spiral thinking. It's really, really, really stressful to be in that state. And that's why the scene where I paused is pure white. It's as if to symbolically depict that Hitori's mind has gone literally blank. Her brain has melted and imploded.
今の話聞いてなかったでしょう。
ごめんなさい。何の話を？
ぼっちもここでバイトする。
ここで。
私も寮もい。です。どうかな。
And you see that this black and white scene is a external reflection and representation of Hitori's internal reality. Definition right here. Internal reality is how we feel in the inside, and how we feel in the inside always projects and reflects onto the outside. So in other words, our internal reality reflects our perception of external reality. But remember what I said earlier. Our perception is not reality. Our perception is our perception. It's often influenced and distorted by how we feel in that moment. And reality is reality, period. But that's why it's black and white, because it's colorless. All the colors have been zapped out from her internal world because she's absolutely terrified of working, even with the support and the generous offer from her two friends. And I really feel for Hitori and many, many individuals, no matter what stages of life you're in, because social anxiety is not only for children. Many adults struggle with social anxiety because they weren't able to seek help when they're younger. They weren't able to break their vicious cycle that I talked a lot about in episode 1. So it's really, really hard for them to seek help, because seeking help with social anxiety, it's also reinforcing their fear. So even for them to seek professional help with therapy, with coaching, with whatever, it's also extremely scary. So can you think about how stuck they feel? They want to seek help, they want to do better, but then the social anxiety is often all-encompassing, right? It's very limiting. But then I really want to shout out to her friends that this is a reason why we need to have our community. But of course, if you struggle with social anxiety, it's hard to join or create your community. But thankfully, Hitori found these two, who are the bridges. They're willing to become lifelines, to pull Hitori out of her despair, out of her black and white, colorless internal worlds, back to the reality by offering help. It's so amazing and so beautiful to see how warming and how welcoming and how genuine the friends are. All the characters in this show are so wholesome, which I'm not used to because I just finished Takopi's Original Sin with so many shitty people and characters in this show. So this is refreshing for me to see. So shout out to everyone for voting this show. Amazing, amazing so far.
ごめんねチーフ、断る勇気があるならコミュ障してない。それとバンド
Hitori froze. Remember the 4 fear responses? Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. What she just did is both freeze and fawn. I talked about this definition earlier, but it is relevant. Fawning is most commonly seen in sexual assault victims and survivors. They say yes, not because of it's consensual with the sexual assault and the horrible tragedies that still happen, but they say yes, aka fawn, out of survival needs. If I say yes, then I will be hurt less. If I say yes, then maybe I will survive. So fawning that's why it's one of the fear responses that not many people talk about. Most people only know fight or flight, but there's actually 4. So that's what Hitori just did. Out of her fear, she froze. We saw that, right? She was paralyzed. And she said yes. That's fawning, because she wasn't able to say no. And that's part of what Hitori was saying, that if it's easy for her to say no, then she wouldn't have social anxiety. And last thing I'll say is, remember, it's just a quick refresher from episode 1. Social anxiety and many psychological distress and struggle is a spectrum. Spectrum is not a bad word. Spectrum statistically is literally an encompassing wide-ranging scale, right? With 2 episodes, there's plenty of clinical data they have gathered that Hitori is definitely on a more severe and significant side of the spectrum for social anxiety.
じゃあ
どういう意味じゃあのねぼっちちゃん、りょうはこう見えてめちゃくちゃお金遣い荒いの。
Ah.
常に金欠だよ。てれ、どこが褒め言葉に聞こえた？こう終わったらうちに直行で。ぼっち、バイバイ。
はい。
So the Yoki-chan, the girl with the blue hair, you can tell that she doesn't struggle with any internal shame or guilt. Even when she's being criticized about being a big spender or a reckless spender because she's from an affluent background, she has a big allowance, there's no shame. Yes, she blushed, but I think it's out of shyness, not out of embarrassment. Shyness and embarrassment are very different, right? Shyness is a neutral state. Embarrassment is more of a negative state, although I don't like this black and white, framework, but simply put, that also suggests that Yoki-chan, or the girl with the blue hair, comes from a very secure attachment style and a very loving family. If you are from a secure attachment style, definition right here, secure attachment style, and a very supportive and understanding and loving family, then your self-esteem is very, very high. As a child, our self-esteem is entirely dependent on our attachment style and how our parents and families treat us. Do they respect us? Is your love conditional or unconditional? Sounds like the girl with the blue hair comes from a secure attachment style and a very loving family. That's why she has this a wellspring, I think that's the term they used, this wellspring of confidence that even so-called roast and being dissed, there's no embarrassment because her self-esteem is so high. She feels very secure and stable about who she is. Shout out to her parents. And it sounds like the characters here are very wholesome because their parents are very wholesome. Amazing.
で、そのバイト初日が明日に迫っている。
Jeez.
すみません、すみません。
お母さん
So I stand corrected. Oh man, it's so funny. Oh gosh. Hitori wasn't using cold bath as like an exposure therapy to summon her courage and strength, but quite the opposite. She was using cold bath to get sick so she could call out from her job. Oh, this show is so unpredictable, so unexpected, and so comical, yet so deep. Oh man. Oh my gosh.
丈夫な体が憎い。もうこうなったらいっそ仮病を。みじこちゃん。
おはよう今日はバイト初日だね不安だろうけどちゃんとフォローするから
Aww.
一緒に頑張ろう
Very wholesome.
言葉を。自分がいかに愚かなことをしていたか気づきました。気づかせてくれて、私を真っ当な人間にしてくれて本当にありがとうございます。
What?
何の話
The blonde girl's approach in life is kill them with kindness. She's just so kind, so nice, so friendly that made Hitori feel so guilty to a point that she was apologizing over text. Although the friend, the blonde girl, had no idea what Hitori was talking about. Kill them with kindness. That's what she embodied beautifully. And also speaks to how nice of a person Hitori is. Hitori still could have faked sick, regardless of how nice the blonde girl is, right? She could still do that. She's like, screw my guilt, screw my shame. I'm still gonna, I guess, be selfish and out of survival needs. Although it's not selfish, it's more, I guess, self-preservation, self-preserving. Because selfishness is, I guess, prioritizing our own benefits at the cost of other people. But what Hitori is doing is more like out of survival needs. She still could have lied, but she didn't. We call this social reciprocity. Definition right here. Social reciprocity. Reciprocating social, right? It's like you're nice to me, I'm nice to you. So because the blonde girl is treating her with kindness and gentleness and understanding and love, she's like, you know what? I'm going to step up, find my courage, and return the kindness, social reciprocity. And we need social reciprocity and reciprocate the social energy to build any type of relationships. So this is the step one. First step for Hitori to slowly coming out of her shell, her cocoon, like the caterpillar analogy I used in episode 1, to become a beautiful blossoming butterfly. We need to take our first step. We have to crawl before we can walk, and we need to walk before we can sprint. Amazing, amazing.
ぼっち頑張れ。
頑張れ。
チケットの販売は5時
화이팅!
からです
자요!
よ。
That's the manager, the sister.
落ち着いて。
新しいバイトの子か。なら最初からそう言いなよ。
すみま
私、ここの店長だからよろしく。
She's so cool.
せん。よろしくお願いします。 店長さんちょっと怖い。苦手なタイプ。にじかちゃん早く来て。
あれっていうか段ボールに入ってライブしたギターの子じゃん。確かマンゴー仮面。
新しいあだ名。店長さん好き。マンゴー仮面です。そんな名前じゃないでしょ。にじかちゃんのお姉様。
前に説明したよ。けどね、私のお姉ちゃんがそこの店長やってて、
心臓バクバクで聞いてなかった。
So Nijika gives off, I keep forgetting her name because there's so much I'm trying to analyze and pay attention, also enjoy the show. And every time I laugh, I forget about their names. I'm just being honest, but Nijika is like a golden doodle or like a golden shepherd. It's so cuddly, so warming, so bubbly. And then Nijika's sister is more like a Shiba. It's very cool, very nonchalant. I guess seemingly aloof, but not really. She's very kind because Nijika and her sister, they're siblings, right? So of course they share that warming, friendly, that very kind genetics and family bonds. But because of Shiba at the beginning of this episode, Nijika's sister gives us like a Shiba vibe. Because if you know about Shibas, they're one of the smartest breeds for dogs, and they're extremely cool and nonchalant. They're very sassy. So I feel like Shibas are kind of like cats. They have like a cat personality. And I get that vibe from Nijika's sister, whereas Nijika is more like a golden retriever. So warm, so cuddly, so outgoing. Makes friends with everyone.
ここでは店長って呼ぶ。あと仕事に市場を挟むな。
もう怖がらせないでよ。じゃあ、
すみません。暗くて狭いところで一息つきたくて。
一息つくの早っ。
覚えられない。早い。
どこから出した？
Yo, Hitori just pulled out like a Doraemon pouch. Yo, she literally summoned that guitar out of nowhere. Where did she get that? She literally went from underneath the table to bam! Let me infuse these beers and titles and ingredients and menu items with my guitar. That's actually really smart. We call that state-dependent learning. Definition right here. State-dependent learning. It's when we infuse and associate a certain task with things that are familiar with us. So state-dependent learning, we're making our learning states infused with a certain task. So that's what Hitori's doing. She's infusing and attaching her learning about the menu, right? Dependent learning states. She's depending, right? Learning about the new menu items with something she's familiar with, which is playing guitars and songs. So every time she plays guitars and songs, she will think about the menu items. And Hitori is unable to remember all these menu items. It's not because she's stupid, by the way. It has nothing to do with her intelligence, but rather because of her social anxiety and her stress. She gets often disconnected from the reality and retract into her minds with rumination, overthinking, spiral thinking that I talked about earlier, which is the reason why she wasn't really paying attention in episode 1 when Nijita was telling her about their apartment is above the Starry Club, the manager is a sister. It's not because Hitori wants to be disrespectful, and it's not because she doesn't care about what Nijita has to say, but rather it's just her fear response. It's her byproduct of her social anxiety. So right here, again, in a very brilliant way, she's overwhelmed. She's scared. She has a bunch of fear responses. She's paralyzed once again. But she's like, you know what? I'm going to do something about it. And she magically summoned the guitar like a Doraemon pouch and is trying to do the state-dependent learning techniques, infusing learning menu items into what she's good at, which is playing guitar, right? So another example of state learning dependent or state-dependent learning if for anyone that's in school or that has studying to do, I recommend doing something unique, like drinking orange juice or chewing gum. Every time you chew gum, you're learning something new. So when you're taking an exam, if you're to chew gum, you're able to recall and remember certain tasks and knowledge and things you learned. If you drink orange juice when you're learning, then when you're taking the exam, also make sure you drink orange juice either before or during. State dependent learning, right? That's what Hitori is doing. She's good.
上手ですね。ニジカは止めるのに必死で気づいてないみたいだけど。
Guitar Hero.
ドリンクスタッフは
Do you think the manager, aka the sister, made that connection between Hitori and Guitar Hero? Maybe the manager is also musically gifted, right? That's why she works at a club where they have performances. And obviously, Nijita plays instruments, and again, genetics, they're sisters. So it is very likely that the manager's sister also is musically gifted, where maybe she was able to make the connection. Or am I overthinking as always? It's like $5, give or take.
ってるみたいな顔しないで。実はライブハウスは一応飲食店。
Oh, interesting.
だからドリンクを提供してあくまで飲食店として
いつの間にかハードルの高い飲食店バイトデビューまで果たしていたとは。私成長してる。
いつの間
Is this personal growth? Yo, that loneliness hill went from, I think it was like orange flower field to like rose fields, like field of roses. Because remember, roses is also a symbolic storytelling technique because it's showing to the viewers that Hitori is going through her personal journey, personal growth, and stages of transformation. Amazing.
ぼっちちゃん今から忙しくなるよ。
The flowers are
いきなり
dwindling
接
and
客開
dying.
始。なんて言えばいいの。いや、ちょっと待って待って。
終了しちゃった。
私ジンジャーエール。
ぼっちちゃんお客さんに。
僕の雰囲気が失われている。
Did you hear what she said? We are losing the club's inherent darkness. What does that mean? Even though Bocchi-san or Hitori is struggling, but there's so much comedy. It is very comical. It's warming. In an ironic way, the very place, this club setting, aka restaurant, that Hitori is terrified and petrified of, she is actually a beacon of light. She has become this new addition, new element of surprise, new elements of comedy and laughters and joy. That's why the blue hair girl is saying that the club is losing its inherent darkness because it's getting brighter. It's getting more warm. It's getting so much more cuddly and so friendly and just full of laughters and joy. That's the power of stepping out of her comfort zone, breaking out of her cocoon, our shell, to become a butterfly, right? So that's the irony that I don't think Hitori acknowledges or is aware yet. But I'm sure that she will.
お手洗いって。
右奥進んでもらって左です。
結局何も成長などしていなかった。
ぼっちちゃん見て見て。
お、
見て見て。
どうもアレキサンディズムです。
あのバンド結構いいんだよね。力抜いて大丈夫。ライブ始まったら暇になるから。
Nice.
お疲れ。
お疲れ。あれ、受付は？
店長が代わってくれた。すみません。戦力にならないどころかお客さんと目も合わせられなくて。これ使う？マンゴーじゃないけど。
使わない使わない。大丈 今日は初日なんだしすぐ慣れるって。
Yeah, it's day one. Come on.
私みたいなミジンコ以下にどうしてそんな優しくしてくれるんですか？
Subwater flea. I'm dead.
私ね、このライブハウスが好きなの。
Aww.
だからライブハウスのスタッフさんがお客さんと関わるのってここと受付くらいだし、いい箱だったって思ってもらいたいって気持ちがいつもあって。
So wholesome.
すみません。そんな場所でど下手な接客を。
いや違う、そうじゃなくて、私ぼっちちゃんにもいい箱だったって思ってほしいんだ。
Aww.
楽しくバイトして楽しくバンドしたいの、一緒に。
Together.
ま、
Community.
いつかは笑顔で接客できるようになってほしいのもあるけど。あ、ぼっちちゃん始まるよ。
You got this. She's trying. Hitori's trying. Immediately. Yes. Transformation, personal growth happening in real life, in real time. You got it. Whoa, those are cool eyes.
どうぞ。
ぼっちちゃん
Nice.
ドキドキした。でも
Yes. Incremental progress.
きっと今日のライブがもっと楽しい思い出になったよ。
Amen
ぼ
to
っち
that.
ちゃんも
Yes. Yes.
ぽ
A step. Baby steps. One step at a time.
一歩。
Dude, I would love to dissect Hitori's brain. Her imagination. Dude, she's like I feel like this is Hitori's world and we're just living in it. She's like this adventure. She's giving me like free run vibe for inside her mind though, right? One step. And look at the stairways to heaven, right? A song by Led Zeppelin, Staircase to Heaven, obviously, but she's going up the stairs like one step at a time. And I love Nijita's highlights and spotlights. She's praising her. You did it. You were literally underneath the counter, no face, just one creepy hands with a drink. You stood up. You showed yourself. Yes, you barely made eye contact, but you still made eye contact nonetheless. This is not a small step. She actually made 3 different steps. You saw that, right? She got out of the counter. That's 1 step. She made the drink without hiding. That's 2 steps. And she faced the customer and tried to look at the customer's face. Although shaky, that's actually 3 steps. So it's not just 1 step. If you really deconstruct it, Hitori made 3 steps within however 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute increments, the time interval, right? That's amazing. And this is the power of exposure therapy. This is the reason why exposure therapy is one of the most prevalent evidence-based modalities and treatment approach for people struggling with social anxiety because it works. We have to get more comfortable with being uncomfortable to expand our capacity. It's not going to take away the fear. It's not going to take away the scariness, but it's going to make us greater and better at managing and dealing with that scary feeling. And that's the distress tolerance I talked about earlier. Distress tolerant. Being able to tolerate distress and stresses and uncomfortable nature. Because life is full of suffering and uncomfortable things. Discomfort and suffering is part of the Buddhism's noble truth and part of the tenets for this reality and this trippy thing that we call life. So it's not possible to never be scared. It's not possible to eradicate a feeling of discomfort and scariness. But you know what is powerful and what is beautiful and what is empowering? We can increase our capacity, our potential to deal with the so-called suffering and scariness. That's what Hitori is doing. Unfreaking believable and so beautiful to see.
一歩。先歩
Yes, more than a step. Exactly.
じゃあ今日はお疲れ。気をつけて帰れよ。
バイバイ。あ、
Bye
お
bye.
疲れ様でした。
え？りょうは帰んないの？
もう少ししたら帰る。
ポチちゃん、
あ、はい。
またね。
あ、はい。また明日。
Nice.
やっていけそうな気がする。明日も。
She got sick.
ぼっち、頑張ってたね。
そうだね。それにまた明日って言ってくれたね。
Yeah. Aww. So freaking heartwarming. Oh, she's sick. No.
今から作ってきて。
病院連れてくか。
協力してくれてることだし、あとは
Vocalist.
新しいボーカルを見つけるだけだ。
I was literally about to make a prediction and I paused about this red girl. I say that because what I learned about a lot of anime setting, especially with Apothecary Diaries, another series I'm reacting to, the more colorful and vibrant and popping the hair colors are, the more importance they usually have in the series. And all these main characters so far have blue hair, pink hair, Hitori, blonde hair, right, Nijita, and this red hair girl. Because remember in episode 1, a callback is when she was walking past the hallway and she's like, oh, a guitar? And she kept walking because her friends were calling her. This is the red hair girl I was going to say is probably going to be the vocalist. And bam, the show says it. I feel like the show is competing with my prediction. It's like, come on, man. I have a job to do. Leave some crumbs to me for me to pick them up and make some predictions, right? But one quick thing I will say before resuming is the reason why the fever and the cold was delayed for Hitori, of course, I'm not a medical doctor, is because the physiological impact of stress. What did I say that one of the leading killers of today, the epidemic? Loneliness. And what does loneliness cause? Stress. So stress is actually one of the leading causes of many, many death and health detriments in America. And that is a fact, right? So stress is known to compromise and decrease our immunity responses. That's why stress is a psychophysiological phenomenon. Stress doesn't only impact our psychology and our mental health. It 100% impacts our physical health, right? You guys know about irregular bowel movement syndrome, IBM, right? People who struggle with irregular bowel movement syndromes or gut-brain dysfunctions, definition right here, gut-brain dysfunction, is because of our stress. We get diarrhea, our stomach hurts, and so on, right? So stress can cause a physical illness. And that's the reason why Hitori was sick, because she had a really, really stressful day. I can't even imagine the amount of stress she went through. Of course, it's all comedy, it's all laughters, right? I had a blast watching this episode. But to Hitori, who's going through this day, her first time working in a restaurant, sure, with the support, but still, she did something that she was terrified of. She almost faked a sickness to get out of it. So yes, she survived the day. Yes, she was feeling cheerful after. She's like, oh, that wasn't as bad. Maybe I can do better tomorrow. But still, her immunity was compromised as a result. That's why she was sick. Oh, nice. I can't wait till episode 3 and see how really amazing that red hair girl's vocal ability is and how the writers gonna create this fateful encounter between the red hair girl, sounds like looks based on the foreshadowing, the future vocalist with the rest of the band members. Amazing episode, enough said. As always, if you enjoy my in-depth analysis, smash that thumbs up and double check, are you subscribed? Because it's the only way to ensure that my videos show up on your feed with the change of algorithm. And make sure you enable that bell button if you want to keep following my Bocchi the Rock and Apothecary Diaries journeys. And share one thing you took away from today's video. And do you have any other follow-up questions I read all my comments, or I try to, and I'll follow up with helpful resources. As always, I appreciate you for tuning in. Until next time, peace.